From the moment I achieved consciousness, I knew that I was a genius. My first thought was, I am the smartest person alive. This discovery was immediately succeeded by my second thought. I have just completed one entire thought, which seems to be more than most people have. Feeling pleased with my intellectual superiority, I was somewhat surprised by my third thought, which was the realization that I needed my diaper changed. For days, weeks even, I was patronized by my parents, who insisted upon having entire conversations of goo goo gaga. I also found the television programs I was forced to watch to be highly condescending. Was I to be intrigued by the seemingly challenged dinosaur bumbling across the screen? Was I to care whether or not Steve was able to locate all of Blue's Clues? He'd have to be blind not to. My father once asked which program I wanted to watch. Finding them all equally banal, I replied, I don't give a damn. But as my vocal capabilities were still in a most primitive state, it was interpreted as Dada. I had by this point incorporated the word Dada into my vocabulary, but exclusively in reference to the modernist art movement. He had thought I meant father. If I had meant father, I would have said father. Within a month of my birth, my parents began to parade me in front of other babies. I found the others of my age. I avoid the word peers for obvious reasons, to be frightfully stupid. I was plopped beside another infant, to whom I said, "Salutations, fellow baby." Despite my more than adequately polite greeting, he began to weep. Over the next few years, this situation repeated itself a myriad of times with various babies. I would greet them politely, and they would begin to bawl. Sometimes I would be visited by my grandmother, and despite her advanced age, she was not significantly more intelligent than my infantile acquaintances. Much like my parents, she too had a vocabulary seemingly comprised entirely of goos and gahs. It was enough to drive a baby mad. Before bed, my parents would read to me from the most dismal books imaginable. Goodnight Moon was not an uncommon reading. The book is essentially, as the title implies, the narrator saying goodnight to the moon. Thrilling, I know. I wish desperately that they would, just for once, read to me something of interest. Proust, perhaps, but no, night after night, it was Goodnight Moon. Towards the conclusion of my second month, I fell in love. I was taken to a daycare center and placed beside the most beautiful girl I had ever beheld. While she had not yet grown hair, she had a perfectly formed skull with very little in the ways of a soft spot. I was taken by her glamorous clothing, which was pink and had footsies built into the pants. I began reciting Byron's "She walks in beauty like the night," which I had, by this point, committed to memory, to her. She did not respond, and to this day I am uncertain whether I was spurned or whether she was simply not yet able to comprehend language. Either way, I wouldn't see her for some amount of time, and that was fine with me, bitch. At some point, my parents purchased for me a series of videos entitled Baby Mozart, intended to educate babies on the topic of classical music. I could not imagine any of the babies I had met being interested in Mozart. They all seemed too intrigued by the sound of their own tears. I thought it was a nice gesture on my parents' part, but I was quickly bored with Mozart's predictable melodies and inflexible diatonism. I remember wishing that my parents had bought Baby Wagner. After an entire year of being treated more as a pet than as a human, it was the time of my first birthday. My parents said that they would arrange a party, and though I was well aware of their questionable tastes, I was looking forward to this soiree. Of course there would be guests, but I wondered who would they be, as I certainly had no friends to speak of. I pondered my upcoming ball. Certainly, I would not be hobnobbing with the socialite elite, but perhaps at least enjoying hors d'oeuvres with others of at least moderate intelligence. This would be my opportunity to show my true genius to others who could appreciate it and understand me. Or so I thought at least. Nothing could have prepared me for the grotesque bash that ensued. On the first anniversary of my birth, I was set at the head of the kitchen table. I looked to my right to see who was seated in the place of honor beside me. Fathom, if you can, my terror when I turned my head to see the tearful child of my first acquaintance, who spurned my salutations with cries. To my left, the heartless harlot who so coldly ignored my Byronic recitation. Perhaps the food would be good, I told myself. This last hope was shattered when I was presented with the gaudiest cake ever to soil an oven. And on top of the cake was that horrible purple bumbling dinosaur I so despised from television. My throat tightened, my heart pounded. My parents said, "We have a very special guest." Was this all a joke until now? Some sort of sick prank? Who could the guest be? Perhaps a great innovator of the arts or sciences. I was excited. Through the door, however, walked the dinosaur from television and from my cake. He spoke in his slow, dumb voice and bumbled about precisely as I'd noted before. "Well, who's the birthday boy?" he muttered. I remained silent, but my parents gave me up. He approached, and I cringed with every step he took. He began his awful cacophonous rendition of Happy Birthday. My brain-dead guest screamed with glee. I took my head in my hands and waited for him to leave, and I tried to figure out how many more years of this I needed to endure before succumbing to the sweet release of death.